to our course. Professor Eady is a distinguished scholar in the field of education, currently serving as a professor in the School of Education at the University of Wollongong, Australia. Um, based on my research, her extensive contribution to work integrated learning have significantly advanced our understanding and practice of integrating real-world experiences into educational settings. Um, I have two articles that impress me. The first one is an institutional framework for scaffolding work integrated learning across a degree. This article provides valuable insights into embedding will throughout academic programs. And another one is her research on designing for inclusion in work integrated learning, a scoping review. This one emphasizes the importance of creating equitable and inclusive will opportunities for all students. Beyond her research, Professor Eady has been recognized for her excellence in teaching and learning. You know that she holds fellowships with the Higher Education Research and Development Society of Australia and also the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So it's a rare privilege to have such an esteemed expert share her insights with us today. Let's make the most of this opportunity by engaging actively and thoughtfully. Professor Eady, the floor is yours now.
Thank you so much, Atit. That's such a lovely, and thank you for the claps and everything. I'm so happy to be here. And I was just, sometimes when you're really busy and you have lots of things going on, you get lots of emails from people and you're not sure, is this a real email or this is not a real email? And when I got the email from Atit, I thought, oh, I don't know, is this a spam or this is real? And then we got talking and it turns out to be a real thing. So that's really good that it ended up being real. And I was really excited I told him I think I was being a little bit bossy. He said, no, you're not being bossy, but I wanted you to take a look at those 3 articles that were sent around to you, to take a look and to think about reflecting on your own journey in teaching and learning and how one of those articles might speak to you. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that today. So I'm just going to share my screen, if that's all right, and we'll see that everyone can see it. Maybe you can just give me a thumbs up or something like that. Great. So there's quite a few slides here. I know that there's about 90 minutes. I'm really happy to have conversation. I'm really happy to take your questions and to have discussion. And I guess most of all, one of the most fun parts of my job is sharing what we do and sharing things that we're passionate about. And so I'm hoping that today that you'll go away with some ideas for your own institutions, your own field of study where you're working and the kinds of things that you would like to do. And I hope that we end up now being colleagues and friends and that you can feel comfortable to reach out to me anytime, because that's the kind of person that I am. I'm happy to have a conversation anytime. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about preparing world-ready graduates and the T-shaped learner and work integrated learning, a formula for success. So one of the things that I have been really lucky in my position at the University of Wollongong is that I have also been appointed to a few different positions. One of them is the president of the International Society of the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, ISOTL. That's allowed me to travel around the world and spend a lot of time with lots of different kinds of scholars at different places, and learn what are some of the interesting things that are happening at other people's universities as well. And please, if you need me to slow down, just, give me the sign to slow down or something like that if I'm going too fast, because I just get too excited. When I'm visiting these places, I find out some of the terms and things that other universities are using. And for a long time in the university sector, we were using words like employability ready, job ready graduates, right? And now there's this kind of new term that they're talking about, world ready. So that university is not just about preparing students for the world of work, but for the world in general, and how to deal with each other, how to deal with people, how to work in groups, that kind of thing. And I actually have a friend, her name is Jennifer Dobbs Oates. She's at the University of Purdue in the United States, and she is the Dean of World Readiness. So she's actually been given that title at her university, that she's in charge of ensuring that the students are world ready. So I'd like you to think about that term a little bit today, and what does that mean for you? Yeah. I'm just going to see if I can, I'm not used to using Teams, so I have to go. So I understand that you're kind of all over the place like this, and I wanted just to put us on the map and say, this is where I am. I'm really not that far away. You know, next time you have to bring me over to you so I can have an actual face-to-face visit. Have any of you been to Australia before, or? Yes, okay, great. No, says Nan. Sumitra, have you come a couple of times?
I've been in Melbourne for a long time ago when I
Okay.
was young, was very young.
Okay, great. And anyone else been this way before? No? So now you have a friend that you can come and visit, so you can come anytime that you like, yeah? But I'm seeing here kind of how far apart we are from each other. And I wanted to show you a little picture of where I live. So this is Wollongong. It's hard to say, Wollongong. It is on the east coast of Australia, about an hour south of Sydney. So when you land at the airport in Sydney, you take a train, and it's about maybe 55 minutes to get to Wollongong. And it's a really nice train ride all along the ocean side, really lovely. We're about 85 kilometers from the Opera House in downtown Sydney. Our average temperature is about 27 degrees. In this region, we have 300,000 people and about 11 national parks that you can go hiking and walking and things like that. And then all of these beautiful beaches, 17 patrolled beaches. So the university is actually just off this picture, just a little bit right there. It's about a 10-minute drive to the beach. And this year we're celebrating our 50th year as a university. And I have a history myself with the university, and I'll explain that in a moment. So now that you've seen the picture, you can come here and swim right here in this pool anytime you like to come and visit. We are very careful about respecting and showing respect for the Aboriginal people who were on this land long before that we were. And we just take a minute, and this is the slide that's shown in all of our lectures. Anytime you do a lecture, anytime you have a meeting of any kind, there's always an acknowledgement of country. If there's an Indigenous person in the room, they usually do a welcome. If there's not an Indigenous person in the room, then there is an acknowledgement saying we know that we're on Aboriginal land. I get a little bit worried that this becomes very tokenistic. We throw the slide up, we show the slide, it's over. So I like to do things a little bit differently. So I guess I'm not sure if you would understand what I'll say now, but when you're in the ocean, if you go for a swim in the ocean, if you've ever been for a swim, and the waves are going up and down and up and down and up and down, and you begin to feel like you're part of the ocean because your body's going up and down and up and down with the waves, yeah? This is how Aboriginal people feel about all of the country around them, about the trees, about the land, about the grass, about the flower. They're part of that. They're connected to that. And they always pay respect to the land around them because they know that that's where they have learned their life lessons is from country, they call that. So today, at some point in your busy lives, if you can just take 1 minute just to look at something in nature where you go, wow, like look at that flower or look at that really beautiful green tree. How lucky am I that someone has taken care of that for me? And I'm going to keep taking care of that too, because we know if we take care of country, that the country will take care of us. And so I just thought it was important to show you that this is the kind of thing that we do in Australia every time we have a meeting. The other thing that I think is really important is to be really specific about where you are in relation to your research. Now, this is a big, long thing. Atit has these slides, and I'm sure that he'll share them with you. But what I need you to know is, my background is Indigenous, but it's Canadian Indigenous. I have a great grandmother who was an Indigenous woman. And I bring experience from working in Indigenous communities, and I'm going to show you those pictures of those places that I've been. And I really believe that it's important that when we're working with Indigenous communities, that we honor the fact that they are the first owners of the land and that we respect their ways and their traditions. So I think it's really important to kind of put it out there and say, I'm doing this research because I'm interested in this area. I'm doing this research because this is who I am. So we have a statement of place. So when I think about all of the work that I've done in higher education space, I've been having fun with AI. and I asked an AI program to create a picture for me of the future classroom. And what does the future classroom look like? And this is the picture that it showed me. And I thought, wow, that first of all, it looks very dark. Secondly, it looks pretty lonely. You know, there's not too many people talking to each other. There's nobody that are really having a conversation. The teacher, quite frankly, looks a little bit scary. And it doesn't look to be really engaging with folks either. So then I said, well, so what does an engaged classroom look like today? And it showed me this picture. And the same kind of thing, right? Like it's more of in a circle. She looks like she's kind of engaging a little bit more. There's still technology with the whiteboard on the back. People are smiling and they're looking at each other. It's very multicultural, but still not exactly what I'd hope for my students. And so I asked it again, could we take that outside? Could we see what that looks like if you take your classroom outside? And AI made me this picture. Now we're sitting on the ground, we're listening, we're having a discussion, right? And it brought me back to this thought of, oh, this reminds me of Indigenous ways of knowing and thinking. We sit in a circle, we're talking to one another, we're on the ground, we're paying attention. And a lot of the things that we talk about in our university, you know, over this past couple of years or since COVID, is how when you used to walk to a lecture theater, there was all of this noise. Students are talking, they're talking about what happened on the weekend and they're asking how everybody is. Now, when you walk to a lecture theater, it's quiet and everybody's on their phone doing this and nobody's talking to each other and you don't have to clap your hands to get attention. But it's like we've forgotten how to do this, how to sit and have a conversation. And so my research and my PhD took a look at how can we make this kind of community in an online environment like this, because I know it would be so much better to be right in front of you and to shake your hand and to touch you and say hello. But this is kind of second best, isn't it? Because we have our cameras on, we're still engaged. I can see you shaking your heads, and I know that you're engaging with me. And so we talk a lot about how much university has changed. We have quite a famous a researcher that I enjoy to read her things. Darling Hammond is her last name, and she says, educators must not worry only about what to teach, but how to teach, so that our pedagogy explores theory and shapes practice that enables our students to become lifelong learners and engaged members of society. So it's not the didactic standing in front of a classroom and you're the empty vessel and I'm the all-knowing professor and I'm going to impart you with my knowledge. Yeah, it's more about engaging with each other, understanding how to be a learner. How do I learn something new? And that's going to result in a more engaged level of society. So there was one of the articles that I shared with you was the Bass and Good article from 2004, and they were talking about, can we balance subject knowledge and real world readiness? And they said that back in 2020, in 2004, and now we're 2025. So would be considered to be an old article, but they were already thinking about that back then. Because when we talk about universities, usually we talk about them as an ivory tower, as a place where you come to gain knowledge. It's a place of higher knowledge, yeah? But this face of what's going on at university is changing quite a bit, because now we don't only want to impart our knowledge on students, and we want them to be able to be world ready and be able to take on jobs, be able to be adaptable, to be flexible. So even back then, they were asking this question, can we balance these two things? And I think that we continue to ask those questions today. So when we take a look at the word education, it actually comes from a Greek word, educar and educare, which means to mold, to make, to form, but also to lead and guide and uphold. So even when we're looking at the foundations of the word education that we're all involved in, it's more than just telling information to someone. It's molding them, it's forming them, it's guiding them, and leading them down a path of self-fulfillment, yes, but also understanding a topic and also being able to be successful in today's world. With ISOTL, I don't know if any of you have ever been to an ISOTL conference, this year it's going to be in New Zealand. It's in October, and so it's not too far. It's something to think about anyway. And we have a thing called an ICWG, which stands for International Collaborative Writing Group, where you get together with a bunch of people 2 days before the conference about a topic that you're all interested in, and you work on this topic over a couple of years and do some publications and things like that. The last one that I did was called the ICWG Public Facing. And we were concerned with how can we get people who are not involved in teaching and learning to understand what SOTL is, understand what the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning is. So we created a podcast, and the podcast is called The Teacher I Never Thanked. And what we did is we asked some famous people kind of around the world, wherever this group was working, about who was the teacher that you really loved, either as a child or in high school or maybe in even university, and that you never thanked, that you wish that you could have thanked. And what is it about that teacher that made them so good? Why did you like them so much? So just think for a minute in your own head about your favorite teacher. It could be a music teacher, it could be a Sunday school teacher, it could be a gymnastics, it could be a primary school teacher. Think of that person, see if you can get that person's face in your head for a second. Think of what their name is. And could you think of 3 things that person did really well that made them an amazing teacher for you? What are 3 attributes that person had? And if you feel comfortable to speak, that would be great. If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine as well. But can you type some words about that person and what was so great about that person? So I'll start us off. So one of the attributions is patience, someone who's really patient. What are other things that you liked about your favorite teacher? Nan, do you have some ideas of your favorite teacher?
Yes.
Tell me.
Okay. One of my favorite teacher is Teacher Jordan. Like, she's my community development teacher from US. Mm-hmm. I really like her teaching skill and also like her mindset to the students. Because whenever we make a mistake, like she never scold us, like she tried to encourage. And for example, if we make a mistake, like, why did you make that mistake? In like she always asks the question, not giving the complaints, like to think the better solution from the mistake or something. So I really like
great.
Yes.
Great. So learning from your mistakes, and she sounds like she's pretty kind, which is nice as well. Yeah, Mr. Fan, do you have a favorite teacher that you had when you were younger? Sophia? Oh, your
Professor,
mic's not on.
I have, you hear me, Professor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Sophia from Cambodia. Thank you very much for meeting you this morning. I have a lot of my favorite teachers, especially my friend. During my times in high school, we have 2 languages, English and French. So since I'm not the outstanding student, I'm not allowed to study English. So I register French. So my French teacher very gentle. He's very happy when even we come late. He still welcome. Never complain. Hey, Sophia, you are late. Why you just arrived? So he always welcome. Even the last 10 minutes, he still welcome student to join his class. So yeah, just one of my teacher that I love and respect. Yeah, a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
thank you. So you can see in the chat, I've put some of those words that we've talked about: patient and kind and gentle and happy and welcoming. And maybe there's some other words there that you would want to add as well. We're going to talk a little bit about our own journeys and where it got us to and why we teach the way that we do now. And so this is, if you're wondering why I'm doing this, I'm trying to lead to that. So these are some of the people that I spoke to. I talked to Adam Gilchrist, who's a cricket legend, Eddie Wu, who is an Australian of the Year, who's a mathematics teacher. He has a YouTube channel called WooTube, and it's for teaching mathematics. A designer and Dutch artist, Simona Disberg. I spoke to the guy who created the animation of Yoda for the Star Wars cartoons, and to the former Governor General of Canada. There's 12 of them altogether, about those favorite teachers of theirs and what were the attributes that they had. And a lot of the things that you just said, Sophia and Nan, being kind, being happy, recognizing me as a person. not treating me just like a number, learning my name, something really simple like that. Learning my name is really important. Those kinds of things are were some of the things that these men said. So here's my journey. Yeah. I did a degree in Canada. I'm Canadian originally. My mother is still in Canada. And I came over here to Wollongong in 1995. So that means I'm a really old woman. And I came over to study how to be a teacher. Yeah, I did a teacher's college program. There were 40 Canadians. We all came over, we studied our teacher's diploma, and then we thought we could stay, but there was nothing in place at that time for us to stay. And we all had to go back home. Unless you got married that year, you found a cute lifeguard or something and got married really fast. Otherwise, you weren't allowed to stay. And so we all left Canada. And then I spent some time in the Arctic, up here in this left-hand picture, in an Aboriginal community for 6 years, about 200 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle. And then I received a scholarship to come back to Australia to do my PhD. And I worked in an Indigenous community on the York Peninsula. So here's a picture of Canada, just to give you an idea. This is Ontario, this is Ottawa, where the star is, where my mom is. If we zoom in on this middle province right here, this one that's red now, you can see that there's lots of little places on the map, and there's a road that goes through the province of Ontario. It has a little maple leaf on it for Canada Highway. And it looks like there's not much at the top of this map, very much. But where I was based was here in this place called Sioux Lookout, where I'm pointing my cursor. If I go in again and zoom in again, here's Sioux Lookout now, and you can see that there's actually lots of communities there. Even people in Canada don't realize how many communities are here. They're all Aboriginal communities. Some of them are very small, like Long Lac 58 has 3 families that have come together. Kitchener-Goopsinig up at the top here has 7,500 people with a store and a church and a nursing station. Yeah, a lot of these places don't have running water, indoor plumbing. You still have to go and the truck pumps the water in, but they all have high-speed broadband internet. And that's because with the doctors and the nurses who want to meet with these people who may be sick, they wanted to bring in a program that they don't have to travel and leave their community, but they can still see doctors if they need to. So we created a program called Good Learning Anywhere that taught much like this back, like my son's 23. So when he was a baby, I was teaching just like this, live time, microphone, earplugs in, talking to the people in this community way back then. So when we were on COVID, it was like for me going back to what I already knew, because I knew how to teach online like this. So this program is all about adult learning and upgrading and helping adults if they want to learn how to help their children with homework, they don't know how to read medicine bottles, they're trying to upskill for a job, then we were providing that through the government in Canada. So that was called Good Learning Anywhere. So that was down here in this province here, but that wasn't far enough north. It wasn't cold enough. So we ended up going way up here to the Northwest Territories and a place called Toledo, that means where the 2 rivers meet. This is the Bear River and the Mackenzie River. And right on the corner of those 2 rivers is this town. Only about 400 people living in this town. In the winter, minus 50 degrees Celsius. Dark all the time, walking to school in the dark, walking home in the dark all the time. In the summer, not nicer, but light all the time. So the sun never goes down. So you're always can't sleep. You have to put tin foil on the windows to sleep. And I spent 6 years living there. And this is how the people got their meat. If they were hunting and fishing and gathering. And this is one of the teachers with me. And we always had the Northern Lights, which were very, very beautiful at nighttime, all of the time. And I went to a conference and I spoke to a woman, she was presenting as well, and she showed me this picture. And I thought, oh, that is so interesting. That's like a picture that I know. Why do I know that picture? And then I realized later that I knew this picture in the snow. Same picture, going to the middle of nowhere out, and this is the road on the ice. This is a lake that has frozen. All those little tracks are the snowmobiles when they take their snowmobiles out. And so I'd understood from her that we did similar things. And she said, what you're doing with the adults in Canada, we're doing with children in Australia. So children who are living in farms in the center of Australia in the desert regions who cannot go to school because it's too far, we're providing them online, live time, synchronous technology like this. So this little girl is in kindergarten. She's 5 years old. She just did a little presentation about her robot here that she made. And then this is her teachers' names up here and all the students in the class, and they're doing an activity together. And she said to me, if you ever come back to Australia, I know some people who would love to work with you. And then I got the scholarship to come back to Australia. So I worked here on the York Peninsula in South Australia in a little place called Point Pierce with the Narungin people, and taught them how to use this software. And they were creating something for their anniversary for their town. And I lived and stayed there for 6 months and gathered my data and worked with them. The thing that I didn't realize at the time, which I know now, is everything on my journey has led me to where I am now, doing work integrated learning, talking about, the T-shaped student. It's all a little step towards, where we're going today. So I came back to Australia. I taught here. These are groups of students of mine. I take my students to schools. I teach teachers. So I teach them in the school. So they've never been in schools. They're coming out of high school. I'm like, okay, the first thing we're going to do, we're going into schools and you're going to see what it's like. And I make them dress nice and they have their badges and we go into schools and we practice. Yeah. And what I didn't realize at that time is that making connections like that between theory and practice is really what work integrated learning is all about. It's ensuring that when your students are finished their studies at university, they're ready to work in the real world. Yeah. So we're constantly making these connections between theory and practice with the students. So this is considered the third space. So the third space is from Zeichner in 2010. He wrote a paper about the third space. And what he said is we have schools and we have universities in teachers training. Or you may look at it as a community and a university, or an industry and a university. And there is this space where those two circles overlap. What he's really interested in is what happens in that space. Because for a long time, we would just dump the students there and say, see you, have a practice out in the field, bye. And that was the end of it, right? So even there was courses at university that the whole course number was only going into the community to practice or into industry and practice. There was no connection back to the university. You get 6 credit points if you go and do that practice. So he was interested, or he is interested, in what else can happen in that third space. So, for instance, in the case of teaching teachers how to be teachers, we have this authentic learning framework that we bring from the university and say it's really important for students to learn in authentic spaces. In the school, they have quality teaching and quality teaching models. And so in that third space, those two things are brought together so that the teachers or the industry partners have expertise in their field, but so do the people from the university, and they work together to make learning more real. Yeah. This term, again, authentic learning, is coined from Harrington's work when she talks about this idea of authentic learning is the best way for our students to learn. And that happens in the third space. So when we hit COVID-19, I've been doing that for about 10 years. Sorry, just hang on one sec. When we were doing this for 10 years, then we all of a sudden were hit with COVID, and we couldn't take the students to the school because it was COVID, and it was too difficult, and it wasn't safe for the students. So we had this, accelerated movement towards shifting our views, and that we really wanted to help them to learn this way. And then we were all shifted to online learning. And the funny thing is that a lot of instructors said, really, with online learning, I've been able to get to know my students better. Thank you. Because now I can see them where they're sitting. I can see them in their office. I see them in their house. I'm making a relationship with them. Their cat walks by on the screen, this kinds of things happen, and I get to know them a little bit better. And that was a lot of, teaching staff that I was talking to that teach teachers. And then with my own sons, I have 3. One of them was studying psychology. And one day I went into his room, and on his phone, he had the lecture recording, double time speed. Sound like Mickey Mouse, you know? Then on his iPad, he was in a tutorial with the camera off at the same time. Then on his phone, he had a movie, playing the movie, all three things at one time, right? And so Gabriel and I had a big talk about how are you learning? How are you able to take things in if you're doing three things at once? You need to turn the camera on, show your instructor that you're interested. Don't just sit there. That means that person is sitting and talking to a black hole. That's not what you want, right? You want to have some connection with that person. And sure enough, you know, mothers are always right. When we went back to the university, he said to me, you know, Mom, that psychology instructor, he came up to me and he said, Gabriel, I notice you because I know your face because you turned on your camera. And I have 250 students, but I know that you're Gabriel because you turned on your camera. And we're going to get to know each other as a result. And so taking that extra step, right, to get to know people has been really important. And it's kind of changed our focus now as universities. Getting to know our students as people, getting to understand what's important to them, even if there's huge groups. You know, this year I had 290 in my class. I don't learn everybody's name, but I really try hard. And I go back to that teacher that I never thanked. And I go back to the way that that person made me feel. Yeah. And I try to do that now for my students moving forward. So we have a group of people at the university. And the idea was that we all wanted our students to have good relationships with their instructors, and we all wanted their students to have experiences out in the field. And you'll see here that we're all from different places around the university. There's someone from Faculty of Science and Medicine, there's someone from education, from business, there are people who work in careers and graduate employability, and we were never forced to come together. It was a volunteer group of people who came together to discuss what we call work integrated learning. The term work integrated learning came from a study that was done in 2009 with a bunch of universities with some government funding, where we were looking at how we can help our students be the best learners that they can be. And this term kind of work integrated learning was coined. So this group of people got together and we decided, well, if we're going, and maybe some of these names you know, Bonnie Dean et al. There's so much work that she's done and that she's published. We call each other our workmates. You know, she's my work wife and I'm her work wife. Professor Venkati Amarajaranam from business, Tracy Maroney from Faculty of Medicine and Health. So all of these people are that same kind of, I call them kindred spirit. When it's people that really care about their students and care about the learning that's taking place. So if we take a look at what we did, we came together, all of these different faculties, all of these different places, and we created a definition for our university of work integrated learning. And this is what we said. Work integrated learning describes activities that integrate work practices with learning in an academic institution. Through WIL, students undertake authentic, experiential learning relevant to their program of study. WIL may occur in person or remotely, in a physical or a simulated workplace, or in the classroom. And includes things like practicums and placements, internships and service learning, industry projects and experience, workplace simulations, and professional activities. I'm just having a problem with my headset. If you could just hang on for 1 second. Comes off. I'm just losing power from my headset and I didn't know what that sound was. So my husband is here being my technician at the same time. And so we took this definition, we went around to all of the different faculties and asked if this made sense to folks. And we were the ones that went, basically on foot to each of the faculties. So we have 38,000 students in our university. We have 5 huge super faculties. And we went as representatives from each of those faculties and presented to the people in the faculty this definition. Is everybody happy with this definition? What do you think? Yes or no? And we got everyone's, yeah, we really like it. From then, when we had this definition of what we mean by work integrated learning, we decided that we wanted to be able to classify what it was that we do in work integrated learning. Why? Because there's a group in Australia called Australian Universities who came around to each of the universities to ask us, how many students are doing WIL at your institution? How many students are getting workplace experience at your institution? Now, I don't know where the number came from. They were given a number from someone out of the top of their heads, out of the university. It wasn't an accurate number because surely it was making a guess. So we needed to figure out a sure way that we knew how many students were doing WIL and what kind of WIL, where and when in their degree. So we created this classification system, and that's the other paper that I sent you, and the one that Achit mentioned, where we decided that we would like to focus on 5 different kinds of WIL. So you can see from these circles, the different kinds of WIL, the more there is a red piece, the more time a student is spending in a workplace setting. So we have co-curricular WIL, which is really not even part of a credit subject, but maybe students are volunteering and they're out working in a school or working in a shop or doing something for that's related to their degree, but not a part of their degree. We can now actually give students a little mention on their testurmer when they graduate that says, this student spent 100 hours volunteering, blah. Yeah. So when an employer sees their transcript, it says right on it how many hours they spent doing WIL type activities. The second type is a foundational WIL. So this is talking about work, thinking about work, maybe thinking about your CV, how to put a CV together, how to do questions for your job interview, things like that, but not actually spending that much time in a workplace, maybe observing, maybe meeting somebody in the field, but not spending time in the workplace. Embedded WIL is when we're doing simulations or workplace or work-based activities. So you might be doing some role plays, or you might be doing a field trip where you're collecting some data or something like that. So there's a little bit more time that's out in situ. Applied WIL is when kind of 3/4 of the time is spent out in a workplace or working on an industry or community project, doing an internship, doing a placement of some kind. And then the final one is we call professional WIL. And that's when the student is spending the most time doing something out in the field that's related to their degree. But you'll notice that even in that last one, there's still a little bit of blue there. And that little bit of blue is the connection with the university. It's actually against our quality assurance policy to send a student out on a placement without having any contact with the university during that placement. They must have some kind of connection to the university to reflect, to think about what they've been doing, to have someone that can mentor them, that can answer questions for them. So there's never a subject that's just a WIL subject and they go away. There's always some kind of interaction. So some of the examples are across the bottom there, and you would have noticed this from that paper that I shared with you. And some of the words that we use, the verbs that we're using from Bloom's taxonomy as to what we're doing at each of these levels are listed there in the third line. And so again, we took this classification system to every school within every faculty, and we talked about it. We showed it on a slide. We talked about how we figured this out. Do people relate with this, that kind of thing? And people said, yeah, you know, that's interesting. And it was funny because we were working from the ground up. This was not the university saying, you need to do this. This was a group of people that started to educate from the ground up around this language. And one day I was standing at the coffee shop waiting for a coffee with Bonnie, with my friend Bonnie that I showed you the picture of. And she said, Michelle, and she took her elbow and she put it in my ribs. She said, listen over there. And I said, what? And she said, I could hear the people talking and they were saying, I'm not sure. Do you think that's embedded WIL or do you think that's applied WIL? And Bonnie said, oh, they're talking our language. Like people are starting to talk about it. Yeah. So now we wanted to measure it was the next thing. How do we measure it? So in order to measure it, we made this question matrix to help university professors understand what kind of will are they doing, because they might look at this and go, I don't know, I'm not sure what I'm doing. But then we made this really easy map. We tested it with 500 subject coordinators from all different disciplines and asked them to read it out loud when they were going through it. So we sat next to them with the recorder. Okay, in my subject, do students directly participate in work? Yes or no? Yes. Are there any work practices performed alongside the real workplace? Yes. Is the whole subject in the workplace? No. Do they spend more time in workplace or in class? More time in the class. Okay, well, this is embedded will. Yeah? So you would follow this map to figure out what kind of will that you had in your subject. So then what we decided to do is we needed to find an easy way for everyone to complete this map. So we have a program called Cosmos that is where we all make our subject outlines. And in that subject outline tool, it says what kind of will is in your class. And if the person doesn't know, there's a question mark. They click on the question mark and it takes them to this map. They follow the map and in 2 seconds, they know what kind of will is happening in their class. So by doing this, we were able to map every single course that was taught at the university, every subject that was within that course. We know exactly which ones have foundational will, which ones have embedded will, which ones, yeah. That also becomes part of the teacher evaluation that students do. And there's now questions about will. Did you do will? What did you think of your experience? Yeah. And then it's also put in the handbook. So when students are looking up the courses and what courses they want to take, it tells the student what kind of will is happening in that course. So now the students are talking will language, and the students are talking the will language to the course instructors. And the only person that didn't really, I think, fully comprehend what we were doing were the people up high in the university. And so suddenly we saw in our strategic plan, every student will have a will experience in their degree. So it was like a reverse, ground up kind of thing that we did with 38,000 students and 2,800 academics to get everybody on board with this idea. And after everyone had completed that map, so in the autumn 2022, 84% of the subjects were mapped. By spring, so we go backwards here, by spring, 100% of all subjects and all of the faculties were mapped. We were able to provide a map for each of the heads of school so that they could see what kind of will was happening in their degrees. So this is an example. This is from the Bachelor of Mathematics. It's a 3-year degree, 100 level, 200 level, 300 level. And those are all the subjects that students have to take in those levels in order to finish their degree. You can see from the map which ones are foundational will, which ones are applied will, which ones, yeah. So from this picture, you'll notice in statistics, there is no will, and that's okay that there's no will. There's also not a professional will where you're spending most of your time in the workplace when you study a Bachelor of Mathematics, and that's okay as well. This is not to, shake your finger like Nan said when that teacher wasn't happy with the answer. Yeah, it's not to say you're not doing a good job, mathematics. It's to say, wow, look at how we're doing in the will space. What else could we do here? There's a lot of embedded will. Do we want to have a bit more applied will? How could we make some applied will subjects? So it's getting the faculties to speak, to talk to one another about what kind of work integrated learning they're doing and how they can improve their practice. So now we actually had a real number, a real baseline of every single person that's taking some kind of will. What kind of will are they taking? How many of our students are getting that experience and where are we headed? So I think Atit was right when he, said that it's a bit of a different story because it's ground up, that the top came to meet us and then it was just about massaging the middle leadership in what we were doing. It's kind of the first case, I believe, kind of in the world where the whole university is completely mapped. Every single subject we know who's doing work integrated learning and where and what kind that they're doing. And we have many universities now who come to us and say, how did you do that? And we give this talk where I explained it to you so that we are ensuring that our students are world ready, They're ready to go out there to the world of work because they've had some practice, they've been spending some time with with industry partners, and that they're really ready to go. So this comes from Williams et al. And they talk a little bit about this idea of different levels in a university system. So the micro level are all the people, kind of the consumers at the bottom, the students, the lecturers, The macro is like your vice chancellor and president and your vice presidents and that kind of thing. And then you've got that meso kind of middle layer. And the way that we approach this is we made this community of practice. And suddenly, well, not suddenly, it took a few years, but then we had this understanding from the macro level of what we're doing. And then that macro level said, okay, we're going to make this part of our strategic plan. And now everybody is on board. So often I find in university settings, it's difficult to get the macro level to understand what the micro level is doing. And it's usually those people at the micro level who are coal face, we say that, or they're face to face with students, that are the people who don't get the big enough voice when it comes to making change and making decisions at the university level. Yeah. So I would love to see that changed. So here we are with goal 1 now in our strategic plan. We will deepen and broaden work integrated learning, digital learning, and entrepreneurship opportunities for our students. And they see this as part of future graduate success. So one of the things that I wanted to say to you today is when you have a passion for something that you're teaching and something that you're working on in your university, in your studies, whatever it is that you're doing, a great thing to do with that passion is to write about it. Okay, so too often we get really caught up in what we're doing. We love our work. As you can see, I get really excited about students doing work integrated learning, having an opportunity to be out in the workplace. And I'm helping my students, and that's great. But then we forget to write about what we're doing. And I know that you're all studying, and because you're studying, I know that you're passionate. And so the thing is that I know that each one of you has something to write about, and you might not know what that is exactly yet, but don't underestimate the magic that you have in that passion that you have in teaching and learning. Because lots of people now see this work integrated learning framework and go, wow, like that is amazing that you did that across a whole university like that. Like, how did you manage that? And all it was people who were passionate about their students learning and making a change and then sharing that. And the part that we often forget is sharing it. So that's where the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning comes in, where SOTL comes in. When we're talking about the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, we're talking about asking meaningful questions about student learning and about the activities that we design in our classes to facilitate that learning. And we answer those questions by making relevant student learning visible and systematically analyzing that. So actually gathering data from your students, figuring out what's going in your classroom. I teach a class called Teacher as Researcher. And I think as teachers, we are all researchers. Yeah, we're always looking for a change and looking how we can measure that. So finding that visible student learning, but then sharing what you've done. And in an effort to improve student learning, sharing it around with lots of people so that they can learn what was the really cool magic thing that you did in your class that maybe someone never thanked you for doing, but that you were able to do in your class, right? And so when we're talking about the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, or SOTL, that's what we're talking about, this idea of asking real questions, making relevant student learning visible, and then sharing the results with others. And so when I told you about the iSOTL conference in New Zealand, that's the International Society. All of these people who are involved in education, who love their students and want to make a difference to their students, and they're sharing their teaching practices and their pedagogies together with others in ways to make communities of practice. So, and that organization has been around for 20 years. So I have lots of great friends in that organization. So again, in SOTL, in iSOTL, we have something like the ICWGs are happening, right? So the International Collaborative Writing Groups. So they'll put a call out for that and they'll say, is anybody interested in a certain topic? And you answer and you say, yes, I'd love to be involved. And they ask you for your CV, and then you get invited to come and work with international scholars. And that's what we did with the Teacher I Never Thanked. Well, the same thing happened a few years before that with a group that took a look at the T-shaped learner. So I want to just draw our attention there. We're still on the same journey, but now we're going from work integrated learning to what does this mean for the learner? So a T-shaped student, it looks like a T, right? The hands are out like this. All of these things across the top, they used to be called soft skills. Lots of people call them soft skills. That's communicating, problem solving, group work, all of this kind of thing, right? I don't like to call it the soft skills. I think it's the very hard skills. I really do. I think it's the skills that are the most difficult, especially since COVID, for students to understand how to talk, how to work out problems, how to have group work. Like they don't know what to do anymore. I had a lecture last year, and they came in my lecture theater, and I said, "Hello, like how are you?" "Oh, we're okay." "Oh, well, what's going on?" "Well, we have a lecture from 8:30 to 10:30, and then we have you at 12:30." And I said, "Oh." And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what's wrong with that?" And they said, "Well, we have an hour in between the other lecture and you." And I said, "Okay, what are we supposed to do?" I said, "What are you supposed to do? Go to there's a thing called a library. It has lots of books. You can have a coffee with a friend. You can work on some, like they really don't know how to interact and how to be with other people anymore. It's actually quite scary to me. Yeah. And they were really concerned because what are we going to do for an hour? You know, they want everything and they want it right now and they want it to get done. And that's just not how we've ever done things at university. So I call these now the very hard skills. The vertical line up and down is the depth of learning. It's still the really important part about what they're there to learn at university. The subject, the discipline area, the depth of knowledge. There's no doubt that that is still very, very important. But we're looking more and more now at these skills across the top. So when we talk about SOTL and we talk about higher education research, there's often a bit of a clash. People who research in their discipline and they publish in journals in their discipline are disciplinary higher education researchers. People who research about their students and the way their students learn the discipline are SOTL researchers. They often thought that these were in competition with each other. Higher education research, SOTL research. You know, they're always, you know, some people thought they were parallel and never the two shall meet. Some of them thought, oh, you're not good enough to publish in your discipline. You must publish in SOTL because you can't publish in your discipline, you poor thing. Yeah. But what we try to suggest here is maybe SOTL is the ribbon that connects the very hard skills and the discipline knowledge. So the way that we teach our academic skills, our levels of inquiry, our scholarship, our academic skills are intertwined with this ribbon that's also helping students to be critical thinkers, to do teamwork, to communicate with each other, to problem solve. So they're becoming T-shaped students because we're being T-shaped educators, and we're creating opportunities for them to learn the very hard skills alongside their discipline knowledge. So this was the third paper that was sent to you, taking a look at the T-shaped student and how do we teach students in this way. This turned into a bit of a 3D printing exercise. That I have mine here. My dream one day is to make it a chocolate out of chocolate. I think it would be really fun to have a chocolate box that was shaped like this. But we printed it on the 3D printer, the T from the T-shaped, yeah. And what we took a look at was taking it from this model that was very kind of 2D to what happens when it's actually deep and it has things inside that need to happen in order for this to take place. And so when we made a 3D shape like this, and we took a look at some of the data we collected from our own practices as what we consider T-shaped instructors, we came up with these 5 areas that we need to think about when we're moving forward in our own practice. So these are the 5 areas, and they even have, I don't know, these when they're made of chocolate, they might be like strawberry and orange or something like that. I don't know. But each one has, yeah, the little pieces that go inside. So the first one is context, contribution and co-creation, ethics of care, valuing, and research as integral. So when we take a look at each of those, we're talking about the context. As a teacher, as an educator, as someone who's working in education, we need to understand the context that we're working in. We need to understand people's family lives, what's going on, are there religious holidays, what's happening in the economy, what's happening in society, all of those kinds of things we need to be aware of. And it's really important to know that if you're going to be able to be relational to your students and their needs. We need students to co-create with us and to contribute with us and not just be the people who are sitting there and listening to us, right? We're not the sage on the stage anymore. We're just the guide on the side. And we want them to be part of what's going on in the teaching and learning in higher education. There needs to be an ethics of care, that we actually care about our students and that we care about their learning. And I always say to my students, it is your health and your family first, and your studies are second. And that's okay. I'm not saying that you forget about your studies, but if you're having a problem and something's going on and you need extra time or you need to talk about something, my door is an open door, and you're welcome to come and talk to me. And I care about what's going on with you. Does that create some more work for me? Yeah, but I think it's valuable work, and I think it's an important work to have a heart as an instructor. Valuing others people's opinions and understanding what's going on for them is another piece. This for me can go back to we have to be very careful now about what we say in class. And because I'm an old lady and I get really excited, I sing songs with my class and I get them going, and then they have a question and I say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, go ahead, sir. And then I got in trouble. You can't say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. You have to say, go ahead after you, blah, blah. So on recording, I'm saying, go ahead, ma'am, go ahead, sir. But it's only out of habit. It's not because I'm trying to be rude. It's because I don't always think in that way yet. I tell them we're trying to catch up to you. And so it's very interesting that when you show that you care and you correct yourself and say, sorry, I meant they, I didn't mean she or whatever, you're valuing what they need you to value. And that's part of this piece as well. And then that last piece is research, actually talking about how do you do this in your classroom? How do you teach in this way where you understand students, where you have them co-create, where you care about them, where you value what's important to them, and sharing that around. So for instance, this is a paper that we just finished publishing that is with Dave and I. It's funny that you said that, Atit, because Dr. Drury is on this paper with me, where we were talking about students' reflections of quality in work integrated learning. And what we found in this paper is we were really interested, what do students think makes a quality will experience? If you're going to go out and have a practice session somewhere, what do you think is really important? So the first step is, well, let's look at all of the literature. And we searched, 2,900 papers or something, and it came out with 18 papers mentioned talking to students and students' voice. And out of that, it was some really, really low number, like something like 82 students or something in the past 10 years have been asked, what makes a quality learning experience for you? So the university thinks we know what makes a quality learning experience. The workplace thinks they know what students need to have a quality learning experience, but nobody's asked the students, what do you think makes a quality learning experience? How can I help you to be a better learner? What do you need from me? Let's work on this together. I don't want to be the person who's the captain of the ship all the time. I want to know what you think is important. So this, again, is one of these opportunities where and I don't mind telling you about this. So this is Elon University, nothing has to do with Elon the man. Elon University is in a place called Elon, North Carolina, in the States. And in North Carolina, they run a research institute every summer. And they ask for people like yourself who are interested in topics much like the ICWGs to come to North Carolina and to work for 1 week in July for 3 summers in a row. And you go every summer for 1 week. They pay for your flight. You stay in residence like a student. It's like you're 18 again. And, they fill the fridge with food, and they just want you there for your brain. And you go there and you meet other people and you write about something. And that's where this paper came from. So I would really encourage you, and that's how I met Dave. I really would encourage you, when there's opportunities like that, where there's things like Elon Summer Research Institute or the ICWGs at ISOTL, to put your name in there. They love having people who are studying, who are just still trying to wrap their head around what they want to do with their degree, and to get some publications is really important at this point in what you're doing, and so that's an opportunity. So here we talk about Students Rock. ROQ, like as in they rock, like rock and roll, but it's ROQ, Reflections of Quality. And we have this thing that is called an Inukshuk up in the Arctic, where the students, where people, when they go out far away, they put 3 rocks that kind of looks like a person that says, I am here. So you can be canoeing and then you'll see these 3 rocks and you'll say, oh yeah, someone was here before. Yeah. So this is called the Student Rock model, where the students have said, look, personal and relationship things are very important in work integrated learning. Having a university that has a really good program that's going to support me with a mentor, that's really important. Having good relationships with the community and understanding the context where I'm going is really important. And so then we did 90 interviews with people in different countries that are students and ask them this question that the literature wasn't talking about. So that's one way that you can build it. And then the research just builds. Yeah. Here's a whole list of all the different kinds of research that I have been involved in over the years, where I started as a project that I wanted to do in the university, and it ended up in a paper that we end up sharing with everyone. Yeah. And so if this is something that you think that you might be interested in, and a tip, I open this to you as well, that, I do a little workshop where I run 3 workshops, and it's an hour, and we called it Lunch and Learn. And every time you learn a little bit more about SOTL, and by the end you have an idea of what you could write about. And I've done that for a university in Canada and a university here, and I'm happy to do that for you as well. And I do it for free, I don't care. But it's just to get people to understand the kinds of things that they could write about based on what you're doing in your teaching and learning, and so if that's something that interests you, then talk to a tit about that, and that's something that could happen. But I have to say that all of these papers and all of these relationships came from putting myself out there and saying, hey, I want to give this a go. I want to meet other people who are interested in similar things to me. It's grown into being the editor of a special issue on Indigenous will. And so this is papers from around the world of people who are working with Indigenous communities and doing work integrated learning and the kinds of things that are happening in that space. With this as well, what I find interesting is the relationship between a community and a university can be so rich. There's an example paper in this journal where the local community college, university college, went to an Indigenous community close by and said, what do you need? And the Indigenous community said, we really need a new gymnasium for the children to play in because the roof is falling in on our building. We don't know what to do. They took this back to the college, and then the students designed, many of the students were from that community, designed what that was going to look like in the architecture class. Then the students in the carpentry class, they built the building for the community. Now the university is offering a groundskeeper, electrician plumbing course to help the community upkeep that building. So it's a win-win-win situation for everyone because the university is doing something that's meaningful to the community feels like the university cares about them, and the students are doing something that's meaningful for them. So this journal is filled with stories like that, and examples of universities doing that. And then it's turned into a couple of books. We did a book about school-university partnerships that are just in Australia and what's going on in the space in Australia. And then also case studies in teacher education. That's a world global perspective on these different kinds of partnerships and how we're working in the third space. And so those are around as well. So I've shared with you today a lot of examples and my story of kind of my journey that are evidenced in the ways forward in future research. And what I really wanted you to think about, today and maybe, walking home from your time at work today is thinking about your story. And what of all the things that you have done in your life, where does that bring you to in the way that you do research? You may never have thought that what you do is important enough to be research, but I'm telling you today that it is. Just the fact that you're sitting in this classroom means to me that you have experience and things to share with others that have worked really well, and that you need to share that with others because others are really interested to hear your story. So meaningful ways that higher education institutes can prepare graduates who are well-rounded, they're resilient, they're career ready, they're capable of critical thinking, they're capable of problem solving. What have you done in your role as teachers, or what do you plan to do in your higher education to ensure that you're creating people like that? And so I would love you to think about your area of expertise, but also those very hard skills that you have, that you know what they are and how to do them well, and how you can foster and share that with others so that you can become a hallmark of your institution or your community and sharing with others what's really important over the next 10 years. So if you can think of it a bit like this idea of a journey that you take as a person, right from, primary school all the way till now, the kinds of teachers you've met, how those teachers have influenced you, how that's affected how you've decided to be involved in education, what they did that made you feel that way, where your passion lies, and then share that. It's a very valuable superpower that you have that you didn't even know. So if anything, today you learn that you have a superpower. Yeah. And so that's really important. So thinking about like an international community with mentorship and collaborative sharing, being aware of SOTL, what SOTL is, that it's all about student learning, how we can share our stories of that, that it's an inclusive community, that it's an international global community. All of these things are really important in this space. I spent some time at the University of Utrecht 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and I had never been to a university where someone said something like this. It was the rector, was the president of the university, and he said, this is his thing, one cannot have research without teaching. I never thought in my whole life that I would have a tattoo, but now I wonder if I got brave enough to have a tattoo, it will probably say something like this. Yeah? You cannot have good researchers and people who are collecting money for your university if you never had a good teacher to teach them how to be a researcher. And what I'm finding now, post-COVID, is universities are finally understanding that. The research is not what makes a university. The people make a university. Having what I call bums in seats. I know my job is safe because I have 300 bums in seats in my classroom, and I know they're coming, and I know they're learning, and I know that they're doing something important. So when we're thinking about education and we're thinking about teaching and how we affect others, we are really the most important piece. Research can come after, but it's, if we're talking about the chicken and the egg, the teaching is the thing that needs to come first. So I just wanted to stop in a circle to tell you about the teacher I never thanked. When I started doing this project at the beginning, I told you about the podcast, I thought, now I'm not very famous, but I wonder who's the teacher I would never thank. And I sat down and I thought about it, and I thought about my grade 1 teacher, Miss McVicker. She was my favorite. Here's Miss McVicker standing in the white suit with the big black flower. There's a Michelle Eady standing right there beside her with the funny haircut, yeah, and the dress that my mother made. And I decided to find her, and I went on Facebook, and there was a group from my town, and I said, does anybody know about Miss McVicker, blah, 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 blah. So I got her email address, and I wrote her an email, and I said, dear Miss McVicker, you probably won't remember me. This is 50 years ago. My name's Michelle, and I remember you used to twirl your hair when you got mad, and you always smelled nice, and you had pretty clothes. You went to my house once, and you held my hand all the way to my house, and da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, I just wanted to tell you that I teach teachers, and that what you did in my life has made me change as a person, has made me a better person. I think it took about 48 hours, and I got an email back, and it said, dear Michelle, I will write you more, but right now I have to stop crying because I can't stop crying from your email. Yeah. And then came another email, and then came this reunion where I was in Canada for a conference, and she came to meet me, and I got to see Miss McVicker again. And the difference that I made to her by taking a minute just to say thank you. Yeah. My other teacher, my favorite teacher, was the one in the picture here to the right, John Partington, who was a professor at university. And I had to have surgery when I was young, and I broke my toe, and I had a funny cast on my foot. And he called me the toe lady. And I would come to class every week to university, and he'd go, "Oh, there's the toe lady," you know. And when he marked my assignments, he would write, "Dear toe lady, you write beautifully. Never stop writing. Love, John Party." So I decided to try to find him. So I called his house, and his wife answered, and she said, "Oh, he's very sick. He's not able to come to the phone." And I can hear him in the background. He says, "Who is it?" She says, "I don't know. It's someone who," she calls herself the toe lady. He says, "Put her on the phone." So I get on the phone, and we have a talk, and I tell him, you know, that he was really important to me. And then he puts his wife back on the phone, and she goes, "I'm really sorry. He's not taking visitors." And I can hear him say, "Thursday, 2:00. So I drove out to his house on Thursday at 2:00, and they had 2 different kinds of homemade biscuits and cup of tea. And he was all dressed nice in his shirt and his sweater. And the very next week he passed away. So I was so lucky to spend this time with him and tell him what he meant to me. And he had tears as well. So I would really encourage you to think about the teachers that you never thanked. To be an educator, to be involved in an education system where you care deeply about your students and their learning, and that you are brave enough to share that with others so that we become T-shaped people and create a T-shaped community where everyone, yes, knows content and is smart and knows their knowledge and how to do their job, but we also know how to be together in a community as well, which I think is equally as important. So I know that I talk too much and I get really excited when I talk, but this is my email address. And now anytime, Nan, Chantuk, Atit, Sophia, Puthatakun, anytime you need anything, Sumitra, you just reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. If you'd like to learn more about SOTL and how to write in the field of SOTL, I would be very happy to talk to you about that as well. And it's just been such a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm really happy to answer any questions that you have about those papers that I sent you, or about anything that I talked about just now. So yeah, really happy to hear any questions.
Word problem was relation was the connection and multiplication and division. Multiplication tables.
I can hear someone's talking about multiplication tables in the background. It's very important math happening. I think, Sophia, that's at your institution. Can I take any questions or any comments that anybody has? I'm really happy. Yeah, go ahead, Sophia.
Yes, Professor, thank you very much. I'm interested one point that I want to clarify about the will curriculum classifications framework for, yeah. Or you want to go back the slide to that? Yes, here. Yeah. So here, I just want to know how does the transition from foundational will to professional will in the what we call this framework contribute to the development of the student skill, and maybe if good, if Professor can raise some example as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. Thanks, Sophia. And it's not the first time that I have been asked this question. So we don't think that it's a progression grid. It's not from the smallest to the biggest. You might be in a first year class where you're learning anatomy and you need to go into the field and you need to learn all of the muscle parts, and you're in a lab somewhere and you're doing an applied will subject right away. Like, it's not, we start slow with foundational and then we move to the next one and then we move to the next one. When we take a look at this map of this math subject, you can see this applied will, which is the third one here, right, is already happening in the first year subjects. So it's not so much that it's a progressional piece, but it is a variety. We want students to have some experience where they're learning about their career. They have a guest speaker that is doing a workshop with them. We never have a guest speaker unless you can have this conversation afterwards, because that's not will if you're just sitting and listening, right? You need to be interactive and you need to be doing things as well. And so the idea is that every student has a chance to experience all the types of will in their degree. So you can see that this cohort in mathematics would have a chat about, can we do professional will as a mathematics student? Could you be out there doing a big internship or some kind of project that involves math that you could be marked on that could be considered professional will? So that's to start the discussion here. Our hopes is that there would be a variety of different kinds of will that are happening, across a degree so that students are able to have all of these different kind of experiences, whether it's observing or participating or having a practicum or actually working in the office or whatever that might be, but not so much a progression. And I think by your second part of that question is, how does it affect students? Well, when we're doing things like foundational will, we're observing, we're reflecting, we're learning how to critically reflect, we're learning how to use that information to improve ourselves. When we're doing applied will, we need to work in groups to do something for an industry project, and we need to learn to work with the group and make a contract. So if there's anybody who's not doing their work in the, what are we going to do about that kind of thing. So I think when we go back to the T-shaped student, there's pieces across all of this classification framework that fits nicely either across the vertical or the horizontal or the vertical in that space, right? So it's not so much a progression as it is a full experience of being able to have that authentic understanding of a career or a job or a workplace before you're going into it. Does that answer your question, Sophia?
Yes, Professor, it's clear. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for your question. And everyone can just call me Michelle. There doesn't need to be any professor stuff. Nan, what do you have something? I see a burning question.
Okay. Yes. Firstly, I would like to say thank you so much. I got many like the concept, the Blue IL concept, and also the other knowledge as well. The one thing that I really like is like in the first session that you mentioned, like work not only work ready, like it's a world ready. I really love that because this is also the one that we should consider like in the future work integrated learning, because that is the one that I never think okay, because just today it's come out in my brain. So but one question that I would like to ask is like as you know, after COVID pandemic, like the online teaching program is also getting popular and also famous in many institutes. They use the online learnings. So how do you see the virtual internship program? I would like to know some of your opinions on the virtual internship program. Do you think it's a good idea, or should we?
You're saying a virtual internship program, right? I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, because your microphone cut out a little bit, just so you know. Way back at the beginning, when I was telling you about my PhD and what I was doing and how I was using virtual spaces, right? Way back then, 23 years ago. When I went to the Aboriginal community to do my PhD, when you do your PhD, you have every 3 people look at it and they give you all kinds of comments and how you need to change it. The thing that was most important to me was one of the elders in the community, one of the old ladies. She took my paper, she took my PhD, and she read every single page and she put a mark on it if she was happy with it or where she wasn't happy with it. And that was the piece that mattered to me the most, was that old lady that, she went through it very carefully. And she said to me something that I wrote in the front of my PhD, which was, the best thing that we could do is be face to face, And she said, I would like to hold your hand. I would like to feel your breath on my face. I would like to look you in your eyes sitting in front of you. But if we can't do that, for whatever reason, her example was, for a long time in Australia, there was a stolen generation where they were trying to breed out the Indigenous people, and the babies were stolen and taken away to other parts of the world. And they were reconnecting with some of their babies, with some of their cousins and some of their grandchildren from way back then. So they couldn't fly to Ireland and they couldn't fly to England, but they could see them like this, that this was the second best. If we can't be there and touch each other and see each other and see what we're, look in each other's eyes, then this is the second best. So for a very long time, people said, you cannot make a community of learning online. That's not the same as if you're in the classroom. I disagree. It's not my chosen way of doing it. I would really love to be face to face with my students. I know our university is taking a huge change. We're going to have a lot of pre-recorded lectures, and there won't be big lectures anymore. There'll be tutorials, there'll be workshops, small groups, but not big lectures. And I think we're going to see that globally. We're going to see a reduction in that. So we need to be open to the virtual, learning and the virtual internships. I get that. But it's ensuring that we are being that T-shaped educator in that space, Nan, that we are taking an invested interest in what's going on in that internship, that if it's a virtual placement, then you're going to do something like this, that I can pop in as the teacher and I can see what's happening as well, that there's a place for you to have feedback and to have conversation with people. So you're not just out there in the virtual world doing an internship by yourself, that you're supported, that you're mentored, So these things take time and figuring out how to do those things online or how to do those things virtually. But I think they're critically important to make a significant and positive learning experience for the student. So it's not my choice, Nan, but again, you have to remember that I'm an old lady, right? I would much rather sit down and have a cup of tea and talk to someone and look at them than do it this way. But if we're going to do it this way, then let's do it right. Let's make sure we're still making those relationships and checking in on students and that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Yes, good question. And I'm glad you like the World Ready. I think World Ready is a really good, because it's not just about work. It's not just about a career. It's about people and how we treat each other. I think that's so important. Thank you for your question. Anyone else? Sumitra, she's ready.
Yes,
Here it comes.
yes. Okay. First and foremost, thank you very much for insightful information that you share with me. And actually, it's aligned with my interest because now I'm about to do the research about the employability skill. And because I was assigned to teach, because I'm a university lecturer, and I was assigned to teach in many courses that concern about the soft skill that you mentioned is hard skill in the T-shape, right? Yes, because especially the young generation in Thailand, in Thailand context, the communication skill is really thing that Thai students need a lot because the technology disruption and a lot of things that make them like lack of these skill. So they have to increase this kind of skill. So the thing it might not the questions, but I would like you to suggest if I would like to continue my research on employability skill, like employability lady. Do you have any suggestion about? Yep.
Yes. Yeah, there's lots of journals. I mean, Sumitra, if you write me a little email and just remind me that you have sent me, I can send you good journals to look at and some really good pieces that are out there on employability skills. Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. And I think it's a really important area. And Sumitra, I also think that it's not just Thai. It's a global issue. It's a global issue. Like I've spent time in Holland. I was invited to Switzerland. I go to the States next year or this year for a Fulbright. I'm doing it. And everywhere I go and meet and talk to these people, they're saying the same thing about the students. Like, what is wrong with the students? They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to ask questions. They're entitled is another word that is used a lot. Like I have this term that I was using, entitled disengagement. I'm going to write a paper about this. This is what this means. Entitled disengagement. I might participate in your class if I feel like it that day. And that's okay. But if I don't feel like it, I'm not going to really participate. And that's okay too, because I'm entitled to do what I want. Like our classes start in March and I have students writing me yesterday. Do I have to come to lecture? Do you have to come to lecture? You're coming to university. Like, what do you mean? Do you have to come to lecture? Do you know what I mean? And so I've had to go back to some old skill practices. Like I have a quiz in my class. And the quiz is 1/3 of the lecture material, 1/3 of the tutorial material, and 1/3 of the reading. And they said to me, oh, so we are doing it on the computer. I said, no, we're doing it on paper in the class with the pencil, this thing called the pencil, and you have to color in the bubble. They said, oh, so it's open book. I said, no, it's open brain. You need to use your brain. And you need to answer these questions because I'm responsible for sending good teachers into schools. I need to know that they know their stuff. They can't be entitled and show up and say, give me my degree. They have to show me that they've learned. And so I think that this is a worldwide phenomenon, Sumitra, and I think there'll be lots of people who are interested in this idea of how do we teach employability skills to students who don't even know how to talk to each other right now? You know,
Yes,
what does that look
especially
like?
during the COVID pandemic that we have to
Oh,
study online. Lots of people, I dare say that 90% of students they turn off the camera. That I
yeah.
use a lot of energy to convince them to participate, to
Yes.
interact with me.
So hard. I
It's
totally
yes, right?
understand. You're speaking my language. Yeah. And that's how I feel as well. And this is what I, yeah. Sumitra, I told you that I sing songs at the beginning of my class. Every class I sing a song. The very first week, it's a repeat. I sing, they sing, I sing, they sing. All the students who are at the back of the room, I pretend I'm taking attendance and I go up to the top and I say, attendance, please. Nobody's singing. Everybody else is singing. Everybody in the back row, no singing. So then I say, okay, thank you very much, everyone. So every week we're going to learn a new song that you're going to be able to sing in their classroom. But in week 13 and the last week, I'd like to introduce you to your band. And I name all the people from the last row who thought they were putting their name on the attendance sheet, but they're actually giving me their name because they're going to be the band in week 13, and they're going to have to come and sing at the front of the class. I've done this for 15 years, and I get some really good singers from the back. They're up there with the bongo drums and the guitar and everything else, and they put on a big show because I caught them sitting at the back of the class. So finding ways to engage them, finding ways to get onto their level, with still respecting them, because that's another piece right now, that students want to be respected. And if they don't want to do that, they don't want to do that. So we have to be careful as well. But yeah, anything like that you can think of that that can help your students be more involved, I think is really important. But thank you for letting me ramble on with my stories.
Thank you for
Puthanakun,
your
you've been
sharing.
very quiet. Are you okay? Puthanakun?
Yes, Professor. First of all, I would like to thank you. Thanks for your experience. Your lecture is very inspiring me in view concept as well. Normally, I would like to first introduce myself. I'm not a
Yes.
teacher, but I am working at education sector. I am a academic staff, but I interest in uh, the project or the research of engaging people or engaging uh, people into the education. Uh, and also I interest in the work with the rural area to develop the rural area, develop people livelihood in rural area. But
Yeah.
I wondering how I uh, how I combine the ideas of education or view into the rural development area.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have another suggestions or
Yeah.
for that,
And
Professor?
and can I ask a question, Puthankan, when you're talking about rural areas, is there internet in those areas, or there's no internet in those areas?
Some areas is have internet, but some area is not because the area in Laos context is quite limited of this technology. Our
Yeah.
technology development is quite slow of anything, maybe in infrastructure, that
Yeah.
infrastructure for support internet as well.
Yeah.
Um, mhm.
It's a lot like these classes that I was telling you about here, like this girl, for instance, right here, that's back, almost 20 years ago, that picture that I took, where the internet is very weak, but there is a signal. It's not great for something like Teams, but the program that we were using was called Centra. I'll just write it here so you can take a look. It's the same program that we were using in Canada and the same program that they were using at School of the Air and that they continue to use at School of the Air. School of the Air is the school that's online for the children that I showed you. School of the Air. If you want to look that up. So this adult learning and upgrading was all to do with being in these remote and rural communities, right? Like all of these communities, you cannot drive there except in the winter. You only can fly. Yeah. But all of these communities had this baseline of internet where we could connect Centra. Yeah. So these folks that were taking these kinds of courses were, working in schools as teachers' aides, but didn't have any training. or they were wanting to do a construction course, but their English wasn't good enough to be able to do the college level course, like this kind of thing. So this was funding that was provided by the Canadian government that is funding different from universities or colleges, but adult learning and adult literacy, where we were able to build this platform from. So if you have a chance, Fothakun, you can take a look at goodlearninganywhere.com and take a look at the kinds of programs. Sometimes we make little videos and they would watch the videos and answer questions. Sometimes we would try to do things where we're face-to-face like this in a synchronous kind of platform. Sometimes it was booklets that were sent to the students to work through, be with the community, something that's going on in the community organization, and then they send those back. It was actually in the mail, that they send their assignments back. So I'm a firm believer in when there's a will, there's a way. You want these people to get education, you want to help them learn, we can make it happen. We just have to be creative in how we do so. So again, really happy to talk to you some more, send you some of the things and the resources that I've used. And of course, this is my area of expertise is distance learning, so I'm really happy to talk to you about that. So thank you for your comments, and please email me. That would be really good. Anyone else? Chanthuk, I haven't heard from you at all.
Yes. So I'm sorry now. I stay at hospital with my son. So my classmate know well about this situation. He's I cannot make the noise now.
That's okay. You don't need to make noise. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. If you have any questions, you can email me. Okay, and I send you very good wishes for your son's recovery and health. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for sharing. I think, Atit, I've got a chance to speak to everyone, and I hope now I have, 7 new friends, and that you'll all send me an email and that we can talk some more about these things. And I hope that this was valuable to you into thinking about how we can help our students learn better and differently, more authentically and engaged. Yeah. And I hope that you don't forget to take a minute on your way home sometime today to be thankful for something beautiful in nature and for the people who've taken care of country. And I just like you to thank you for taking care of me and being so nice to me this afternoon. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Eady, for your inspiring and thought-provoking lecture on preparing students for world readiness. Your closing wish that we focus not only on our disciplinary expertise, but also on cultivating transdisciplinary strength truly resonates with us. It serves as a powerful inspiration to prepare our students, not just for their careers, but for meaningful contributions to society. Thank you once again for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us. It has been an absolute privilege to learn from you today. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's okay. If we could just all smile for a minute, and I'm just going to take a picture of us. Is that okay if I take a picture?
Right.
Okay. Control Alt snip. I think that's what happens. Wait, I just have to find it again. Oh, Holly, you might have to help me find how I take a picture. Hang on one second. I'm going to take it with my phone because I'm an old lady and I don't know how technology works. Okay. There we go. Everybody's smiling. 3, 2, 1, smile, smile. And I'll put you up on my LinkedIn and say, these are all my new friends. It was really nice to meet you.
I can capture this.
Yes, that would be great, because I have a new computer and I don't know how to do that. So now I'll smile.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, very good.
Are we good? Perfect. That's great. It's so nice to meet all of you, and please be in touch and take care of yourself and your family. All best wishes to you. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, Atit. I'll come back anytime.
Okay, thank you. ขอบคุณครับ
Okay, bye-bye. Bye.